Solutions. Today's presentation is entitled 5 Steps to Get Your Firm's Information Governance Initiative Off the Ground. If you have questions during the presentation, please enter them in chat and direct them to Susan Hadley, and they will be presented at the end of the presentation. And so we're going to share our screen with Rob Mattern, and he will take over for here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Hutch. Great to be back speaking with the Liberty Bell chapter. Today we're going to talk about the 5 steps to get your information governance initiative off the ground. I tell you, Susan, if you want to submit questions throughout, I am fine with that. Okay. And I'll try to work them in. If I don't work them in, then we'll address them at the end. But again, I think try to keep this as interactive as possible considering the format. So that would be excellent if you just want to shoot them to me. If I get to them, fantastic. If I can't, then we'll address them at the end. So I tell you, and another thing I would love, just like some feel for what percentage of these the organizations on this call have a information governance plan in place with retention schedules and are in compliance. Okay, is there, any way we could take a measure of that? Can they raise hands or anything like that? Okay, I got one hand going up. Okay, let me just try to change my view here and try to get more.
If they do the reaction, yes, like Tom did. If you go down at the bottom of your screen, you'll see reactions. You could do a thumbs up or a wave or something.
Yeah, a thumbs up, wave. Okay, I got a couple of thumbs up going. Joe LaFink, thumbs up. Kim, okay, fantastic. Okay, so yeah, I want to just make a guess here about probably looks like about 1/3 of the organizations have a working policy in place with retention schedules and are in compliance. If you are, that you're far above the curve out there in regards to a lot of organizations. And if there's anything you want to add, please don't hesitate to do that when I walk through this, okay? I try to keep this pretty on a macro level. If someone has a micro level question, a specific question, again, please submit it and we'll try to work it in. But surprisingly, a lot of firms don't, organizations, and we primarily deal with law firms. That's our specific focus. But a lot of firms don't have a policy in place and they're not in compliance, or they have it for paper and not electronic and so on like that. So again, we're going to be painting a pretty broad picture out there. If someone has a specific, please let me know. Okay, so that being said, I'm going to share my screen. And hopefully everyone can see the PowerPoint there. Okay, it looks like that's working. And we'll get started. There we go. Okay, I'm going to give a very quick overview on what Mattern does in the area of consulting. I'm going to hit 5 points that we think are important for the whole information governance initiative and to get a plan in place. Do a little wrap up and then again address questions during or at the end. Okay, Mattern, we started in 1997 as really just strictly focusing on the legal industry and providing unbiased law firm operation consulting for office services, for administrative services, records, and information governance. Do a lot of work in the area of cost recovery. We'll be doing another cost recovery survey this year. And in that time frame, since 1997, we're coming up on 25 years on September 1st. We've done over 500 client engagements. We pride ourselves on being totally unbiased. We don't sell any services. We don't sell any equipment, software, or whatever. We're strictly sitting on the client side of the table throughout all these processes. And we manage the entire process from speccing a situation to actually implementing a solution, either whether that's in-house or outsourced, and then staying involved throughout the life of that contract or process to make sure what was recommended is working. We worked with 42 of the AmLaw 100 and 70 of the AmLaw 200. So, and we pride ourselves on being unbiased subject matter experts. I'm not a techie. I'll be the first to admit it. We got people on our staff who are the techies. So if you ask a technical question, be more than happy to take it down and get it answered by one of our consultants on staff. Okay. All the different services we offer: current state assessment, benchmarking. Benchmarking is huge right now, especially in the administrative field and the legal market. RFPs, we do a terrific amount of RFPs for outsourcing, for offsite record storage, because that falls under this whole information governance umbrella. Contract negotiation, change management, huge. We're going to be hitting on that hard today. Implementation oversight of new contracts or services, and then ongoing contractual monitoring and maintenance. These are all the different areas that we consult in. Okay, office services is where we got our start. You know, the copy, fax, mail operation. I'm showing my age there. Branched out into records and information governance, where we actually do create policies for firms and with retention schedules and oversee the implementation of those. We have a number of clients, and there's, I think, one on the call here today that is one of those projects that we're doing. And along with that, get your offsite record storage contract in shape. Of all the areas that we consulting and work in, offsite record storage contracts tend to be the biggest angst out there for our clients. Okay, a lot of firms are in contracts that don't make it cost effective to destroy. Therefore, you're not in compliance, or it's just too expensive. So that's an area that we spend a lot of time in, and we get very, very good results. And then administrative services. If you're in a law firm right now, everyone's looking at how to deliver the administrative services in a hybrid environment to their attorneys and timekeepers. As a matter of fact, I was at the AOA conference yesterday in Orlando and gave a talk on that very, very subject. But that's a huge area for law firms right now. Okay, I repeated the discussion overview. There's also something in there when I read the email about litigation support pricing or whatever. And I think there was a little mix up or some, and we can talk about litigation support pricing and how to do it, but that's not going to be the focus of today's webinar. But this was what was in the description. You know, information governance means many things to many firms, which one is correct, and obviously they all are. And kind of broke down different areas there that firms are either struggling with, trying to create a policy that addresses both paper and electronic, the whole technology of the programs that should be in place, who should be involved. Okay, and there are firms that still are at ground zero, no doubt about it. Okay, and there are other firms that are, you know, as signified on this call today, about 1/3 of it, that are much farther ahead. You have a plan in place. You're in compliance, you're destroying electronic and paper. Hopefully you're doing it in a cost-effective way, but you're doing exactly what you should be doing, okay? And there's a terrific amount of benefit to the organization for being in that position. So we're going to talk today about kind of taking it back to ground zero. How do we get a program started if you're not there? If you're already there, you could take a little nap during that phase, that 1 or 2 slides. And then we're just going to talk about the different pieces that fall into place, and perhaps you could tweak what you have in place now and make it better. Any questions so far? Anything come through yet, Susan? No, nothing?
This is such. No, nothing has come through.
Okay, nothing's come through. Okay.
I'm sorry, hang on, there's one.
Oh, one.
Do you know how many AmLaw 100 or 200 law firms have a CIGO position, CIGO?
I'm going to say, well, I'm assuming CIGO, Chief Information Governance Officer. I tell you, there's directors of information governance, no doubt about that, and there's a lot of them out there. Whether it has reached the chief level, yeah, I'm going to, well, first of all, we could find that answer out for you by searching our database. We have an excellent database of all the C levels in all, really, probably the AMLA, probably the top 500 firms in the country. So we could research that and get back to you. Brooke, you want to make a note of that? But there's not many. It's not a title that we see a lot. But there are a lot of director level information governance. But C level, I haven't seen it. But again, we'll take a look. We'll do a sort on our database and I'll get that answer back to you. You just make note of who asked that question so we know who to follow up with. Okay. Okay. I got a thumbs up from Brooke, so that's great. We're going to take care of that. Okay. What does it take to start an IG program? Okay. If again, one third of you are there, the other 2/3. Okay. And again, some of this is just my own personal viewpoint, consulting with the law firms for the last 25 years. But really, a lot of times it takes a emergency or a financial impact to get law firms, and I'll extend that to organizations, to take the initiative on something. Okay. Emergency. We just had probably the worst emergency we've had in the legal market and since I've been involved with the COVID situation. And if I told you 3 years ago that, hey, law firms are going to be in 2022 in May are going to be mostly working from home, okay, moving to the digital world, okay, with PDF mail processes in place and so on like that, okay, you wouldn't believe me and be as profitable as ever. I would have been laughed out of the room. But that's exactly the situation we're in. Other types of cybersecurity issues in regards to law firms getting hacked. You read every week. McCarter and English is one local firm up in North Jersey that got hacked a couple weeks ago. It happens all the time. So it takes the emergency for firms to really focus on solving an issue. And that's the same thing in regards to information governance. A lot of firms don't react until there's an issue. Another way that push firms to attack something, to make an initiative, is the financial impact. And I tell you, we're seeing that, I'll say weekly, that firms are reaching out about their offsite record storage contracts, not realizing what was signed 20 to 30 years ago in some cases, back when Nixon was in office. And what was signed is coming home to roost now in regards to, additional fees being tacked on and no protection in the contract to prevent that, exorbitant perm out fees. If they want to transfer, no wording about transfer or any type of exit strategy, okay, and payment of these perm out fees. A lot of times these vendors are asking for everything up front, even though before they transfer anything, and they still want you to pay the storage, even though you paid the perm out fee. So again, that's an area now that when firms are trying to implement their policy and destroy paper records, they're finding their contracts don't cooperate. The other area that drives firms to make a change is a client demand. More and more clients are being focused on what happens to the records that you hold. Now, are they your records or are they the firm's record, client's records? Good question there. It depends upon what we're talking about as a record and what, obviously who produced them. But it's being requesting RFPs about what your information governance policy is, what's going to happen to these documents at the end of the case, whether it's going to be returned to the firm, returned to the client, or destroyed, or fall into your retention schedule. And there are also audits involved. Okay, the insurance companies and so on like that. It depends upon the type of law you're practicing, but the clients are demanding that firms have an information governance policy with retention schedules and that they are in compliance. So really 3 big things: emergency, okay, a financial impact, or clients. They're the 3 things that are going to get firms to make a move on an information governance plan. If you're sitting there waiting and upper management's not concerned about it, and we have clients along those lines, we've done their offset record storage contracts, we've done their outsourcing contracts, but they're not concerned about information governance. They won't be concerned until one of these three things happen. So, any questions or comments on that?
Nothing so far.
Nothing so far. So I got to start saying either things that are more controversial or put some jokes in there to try to get some reaction here.
Exactly.
But these are all opportunities to move the process forward. All right? And I'm going to repeat a line that has been milked. But you know, don't let a good crisis go to waste in terms of making changes. And you're definitely seeing that in regards to going digital, but there's also too a great opportunity in regards to your information governance policy and retention schedules. Okay, first point, and whenever we talk to any organization about information governance policies, and I'm in sales, my job is to sell engagements for Mattern and keep our team of 6 consultants busy as much as possible. And one of the first questions I ask when someone calls me up about information governance policy, I'll say, do you have upper management support? As a managing partner sitting there saying, we got to get something in place. Our clients are demanding it. We got to get these offset records storage costs under control. And we had one firm that looked at that along with rent. They were trying to reduce their rent firm-wide because obviously not using all the space they have now. People are working from home, and they lumped their offset record storage into that, which I thought was an interesting way to look at it. That's why I mentioned it. But upper management support, because it's going to require that to make this to work, make this process work. If you don't have it, I'll say, hey, listen, let's meet with the information with the managing partner or the management team or whatever. Explain the benefits of having an information governance policy in place and being in compliance. If they still not support it, then you know what? Don't waste your time on doing a study or having us draft a policy or whatever. Unless you have upper management support, it's going to be very, very difficult to implement. So that's the first thing, okay? COVID, if that doesn't give you enough ammunition to push a digital world on your firm, nothing will. Firms definitely jumped on board on that. They had to, they didn't really have a choice. They've seen the benefits of it. And we call it the whole digital transformation, and we got a white paper on it. That's excellent. That ties this whole thing together. I'm more than happy to send that out to everyone. But that shows this pandemic, and I hate to say this, and I hope it comes across correctly. There's this silver lining. It's pushing the firms toward the digital environment, okay? Show the benefits of having a program or the disbenefits of not having one, okay? Disbenefits, obviously, it's pretty easy. You're open. You're retaining a lot of paper and a lot of data that you don't have to. If you're storing paper off-site, there's a cost to that. So you're incurring costs you don't have to. You know, the benefits are, it allows you to destroy it. Okay, it gives you able to sleep at night knowing that you are in compliance. Okay, it reduces, you know, if there is a cybersecurity situation, it reduces the amount of data that you're still hosting because you haven't destroyed it. That is vulnerable. Okay, and this is another point. I put this thing here, this last point in here. You know, when you start talking information governance with a firm's management team or any really organization team, and they are on the other side of the whole digital process. They grew up in paper. They think, and there's a big misconception out there that with an information governance plan with retention schedules, you're talking paperless. No, I'm not. Okay, paper's around. Paper's still going to be around, even with all the supply chain issues and everything going on with paper now. There's certain people, and I don't want to put them in age groups, but they like to work with paper. I'm one of them. If I'm going to read a contract, I'm printing it out. They don't like to work off of screens. I'm one of those types of people. But that doesn't mean you have to retain that paper. And that's the difference here. If I want to be an electronic first mentality world, okay, and I want to print out working sets and have them, you know, stacked to the ceiling of my office, you can still do that. We just don't want you to store that. Okay? So we want to make sure that people understand that just by going with that information governance policy with retention doesn't mean I get rid of paper completely. If you want it, a lot of attorneys don't want it. They're comfortable working in the digital world, but that doesn't mean that you're not going to be able to print anything out. And that's, again, a misperception out there of this whole process. Okay, we're not trying to take that away from you. We just don't want to store it. We don't want to hang on to it for 30 years. But does not mean that you cannot have your paper if you want it. So that's for upper management. Can't emphasize how critical having them on board is. And if someone needs a sales pitch or talking point, I'm more than happy to supply them to get them to realize how important this is. So, any questions on this slide? Point number 1.
Rob, I'm not sure if this is a good time for this, but I'll throw it out there. We've got a question that says, offsite storage companies were making a lot of adjustments during COVID, often to the detriment of service.
Really?
Is there any way to address that with them now?
Absolutely. Okay. I tell you, we have clients that have been getting charged for if you wanted a vaccinated driver. Has anyone else been hit with that charge? And I don't want to name any specific vendor, okay? But one vendor was charging if you wanted a vaccinated driver to deliver your boxes. Okay, here's a couple of things on offsite record storage contract. Absolutely, okay? Everyone thinks, hey, I'm in a contract, I can't look at this till this contract's up. Well, first of all, you're getting a new Schedule A next year. Every year you get a new one, okay, from all these vendors. You know, they're adding dock fees, they're adding handling fees, okay? One thing you should have in your contract is that they can't put any additional fees on there without you're okay. Chances are that's not in your contract. If it is in your contract, obviously that's your avenue to push back. But all these things are negotiable, okay? So yes, if you are seeing extra fees, reduce service times, absolutely. Vaccination charges, dock fees and handling fees are some new things that are put in place. I could probably spend a whole webinar talking about offsite record storage contracts, about the things that you should have in there. You know, while you're at it, try to get exit strategy policy in there. How many boxes, if you do exit, how many boxes that they're required to move. One big vendor just reduced that from 1,200 per market per week down to 300, which means that if you do try to transfer to a competitor, it's going to take it 4 times as long. And again, I'm not saying you got to transfer, but in order to create a competitive situation next time that contract comes up, it's just going to make it more and more difficult. So if you're getting hit with all that, and you have got hit because they don't publish that, it's on their website, you have to find it. Let me know. And we are pursuing a couple courses of action against that. But yes, now all these extra charges, we're coming out of it, not completely, push back. They're always negotiable. And you can always go out and look at competitive situations at any time during your contract, because you're always on the hook for the perm out fees. They don't get any better at the end. If anything, they're going to get worse when they get bumped up in your next Schedule A. So a lot of firms that think, oh, I got a 5-year contract, I can't look at this till year 4. No, you can look at it anytime. The only way, and I get 2 offsite record storage contracts, but I'm going to tip my hand here and say, only way you get these vendors to move is to put them into a competitive situation. So, but on these little nickel and dime fees they're adding, or they added, definitely push back.
I'm not sure if you saw the comment that Tom just made. We've seen offsite vendors cutting their workforce and failing to meet SLAs for retrieval and delivery because of it.
Okay, do you have a scorecard in your contract with financial penalties for missed SLAs? If you do, enforce it. If you don't, okay, you know what? In there. I think it's going to be tough in midterm, but when that contract's coming up, and that's one thing we are is to get a scorecard with detailed SLAs and financial penalties if those SLAs are not met. If you really think about it, they hold, they have perm out fees. You got perm out fees in your contract that are, we got firms with 7-figure perm out fees. You're not moving that, unless you go through a whole RFP process. So your only recourse for poor performance is to pick up the phone and yell. They're getting yelled at by everybody. And again, you can try to yell at your account executive with most offsite record stores. It's a new person every couple of weeks. So scorecard with detailed SLAs, and any vendor that pushes back on that, then it probably shouldn't be a vendor. They should want SLAs because they should want an unbiased way to be measured for their performance. And they should be willing to put their money where their mouth is. So if you don't, try to get it in there. They'll probably balk if it's midterm, but when that contract comes up for renewal, highly recommend it. Best way to do it. But they should pay if they don't meet performance. Okay, hey, if they miss a rush delivery, why should he be paying for it? Okay, it doesn't make any sense. Oh, okay, we won't charge him for that one. How many ones have they missed that you have paid for? So you got to get the reporting to tie into the scorecarding and something like that in the SLA. Any other questions on that comment? And again, I'm going to talk about more about offsite record storage contracts in a couple slides up, but okay.
That's it for the moment.
Okay, it's a firm-wide initiative. Okay, being a firm-wide initiative, you need a plan, okay? Every department is involved in an information governance policy with the retention schedules to be in compliance. IT, obviously got digital records that they have to manage or be under this umbrella. Records, obviously, facilities, okay, may be involved, admin. So it's a cross the firm initiative because you got to govern all information assets regardless of what their location or format. So it does take a firm-wide initiative to do it. And a lot of times too, if you get the right people on your team, if you're going through this, it's critical to make sure it's successful. But also too, if there's still some lingering doubts out there, and there will be, okay, getting multiple departments involved who buy into this is critical. It's critical because and that's the one big thing about change management is a lot of firms. Yeah, I've been preaching about upper management support, critical, no doubt about it. But in order for change management to really take hold and be effective, you need the masses involved. And by getting them involved and getting them part of the plan, and seeking their input, only helps make the change easier. Okay, so again, it's not just records worried about information governance, or not just the general counsel making a decision. It's a firm-wide project to get into compliance, to get a policy in place and to get into compliance. Okay, so that was point number 2. Any questions on that?
Nothing yet.
Okay. Okay. Pretty obvious one. You need a policy and retention schedule. Okay. How many firms, and obviously I don't have any way to measure this now, but again, I can't tell you how many firms, oh, we're going to do it. We're going to draft the policy. Oh, we got an attorney taking care of that. Okay. Anytime I hear that, I make a point and make sure that we're going to talk to these people in a couple months, because you know what? They're probably not going to be any further ahead. Okay. If you don't have the expertise in-house, okay, and you probably don't, then outsource it, the policy to be written by someone, a third-party expert. And there's tons of them out there. We do it, but there's other companies that do it too, along with retention schedules. Okay. Now, when you come into retention schedules, depending upon your practice areas, depending upon your geographic locations, you could have different retention schedules based upon jurisdictions. And there are companies out there that will detail those and also maintain them because they change. So you could subscribe to as a subscription services that they will update your retention schedules if there are changes in the laws and the requirements in the different jurisdictions. Some firms want to go that route. Other firms say, hey, listen, I'm comfortable with what's in place. Okay. And, and again, that's a big thing. And I have a line here. It doesn't have to be perfect, these retention schedules, but it does have to be defensible. Okay. And it does have to be implementable. Okay. So you want to make sure that, one, you have the expertise in-house to do it. If you don't, and most firms don't, most organizations don't, then hire someone, outsource it. Okay. You want to make sure you have electronic first mentality in that. Even though paper is the predominant way, or a lot of firms are trying to handle the paper, you have to have that electronic first mentality in that policy. I hope there's no attorneys here on the phone, but if if you have an in-house attorney who says he's going to do it in his spare time, it's never going to get done. I'd be willing to bet money on that one. Again, make sure it's implementable. Not a lot. Some firms go with a notification clause to either the client or to the attorney before destruction can take place. I highly encourage you to avoid that type of requirement in your contracts. A lot of times, depending upon how old your records are, they're stored off site, those clients aren't even in business anymore. Okay, chances are a lot of these attorneys whose records you're going to come across aren't even alive. Okay, so trying to wait for that buy-off from the attorneys, or if they are alive and they're still with the firm, is brutal. It really slows you down. Some firms want to have that in there. That's fine. Certain jurisdictions or states may have some wording around that, but we can usually work through that. You do have to be aware of specific client needs. Some clients do have requirements, would be part of the engagement letter, or their engagement letter, or their exhibit to your engagement letter. You got to be aware of. They may want notification, whatever. And again, if they're a client, they're paying the bills, and you want to make sure you adhere to that. Interesting point. There was a access at a warehouse that caught on fire up around Chicago, and we had, I think, 3 or 4 clients that actually had records at that warehouse, and it was a total loss. There was nothing that was saved from that, which is kind of interesting. I'll talk about that in a couple of minutes. But okay, and so we, obviously we're working with our clients, and firm sends out email to the attorneys who had records there. Do you know how many emails they got back expressing concern about the destruction of those documents? And this is across 3 or 4 different law firms, and I can't tell you how many attorneys. 0.
It's amazing.
It is amazing. Okay, and a great relief. Okay, to all the parties involved there. And the story that goes around is like attorneys don't want to get rid of any paper or whatever. And there was but not one attorney was concerned. A lot of times it was already on backup digitally. Okay, so it was okay as long as, and the firm, none of these firms had any wet signature documents at that facility, which are, have like wills and estates and something like that. So it's it was an interesting experiment. Again, experiment is not the right word, but situation that, again, you would think people would be attorneys would be freaking out about. It didn't create a ripple. But lesson to be learned there. So that's the policy and the retention schedule. Again, it's a project, no doubt about it, but it's not insurmountable. And if you don't have the resources in-house, outsourcing, get someone there to get it done, get it in place. And then obviously the firm has to approve.
2 questions for you. Who do you think outsources more, large or small firms?
Depends upon the service. Okay. About 80% of law firms outsource some function. But I'll say the larger firms, when I say a larger firms, 50 attorneys and plus, 35 attorneys and plus, outsource some of their back office. Okay. Smaller firms, And we do a lot of information governance work for smaller firms because they don't have the resources in-house. Larger firms obviously tend to have more resources. So I would say, I can't give you a blanket answer, but I would say it depends upon what we're talking about, where these firms fall. A lot of smaller firms still run in-house operations. That being said, Fox Rothschild was outsourced and they brought everything back in-house. Okay, their whole reprographics and their administrative support all in-house, which is kind of counter to what's going on in the marketplace for a lot of firms are looking to outsource. That being said, has the outsourcing service providers stepped up and are doing an excellent job in that area? I can't say that. You know what I'm saying? They're having trouble attracting people too and training people and getting the right skill sets and something like that. So it's a mixed bag. I hope I'm not dancing too much, but there's not one right answer there. But I think it depends upon what the firms are looking to get done.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Can you talk for a minute about defensible? Who am I accountable to, I guess? Are there legal cases out there where retention policies have been called into issue, or is it client policies that we should be more worried about, or all of the above?
It's the courts. And as long as it's defensible, that you show that you have a good faith effort, and this comes up, and I don't know if I touched upon it and the last time I spoke to the Liberty Bell, but if something is shredded, something you're scanning documents and it's a original document that shouldn't have been shredded was shredded. Okay, as long as you show that you have a QC policy in place, that you have a process in place, that you're retaining them for 30 days and then shredding them or whatever, it's a defensible policy. And the courts show leniency in that effect, that, hey, you're doing everything right and it was a human error. So I always look at, you're going to get some clients with specific needs and you want to make sure you comply and that you have policies and practices and procedures in place. But really it's the courts that you should be concerned about, okay? And as long as, you show that you have again, same thing, a policy in place, you're following it, you have the necessary checklist and so on like that, and you have that policy laid out and you're following it, and even if you destroy something you shouldn't have, the courts will usually back you. You know what I'm saying? It's not like it was a malicious or deliberate attempt to destroy something that you didn't want to be discovered.
I agree.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Point number 4. And we already talked about this quite a bit, but we get firms that do the policy. We get firms that have retention schedules and they're getting their plan together on the digital, electronic, and they go to look at their offsite record storage contract, and it is tremendously expensive to destroy records. Okay, if you're in a metropolitan area along the East Coast, and I'm not saying you have a monopoly on having unfair contracts, unfair pricing, but you see some tremendous perm out fees along with retrieval, along with either or on-site destruction, which if you can do that, fantastic. You don't have to flip the lids, but you see some big dollars out there, and with a multiple year payback, because obviously once you destroy something, you're not paying storage on that. If you perm it out, and you shouldn't get hit with both a perm out fee and a destruction fee, it should just be one of the two, to stop the clock ticking on that space that you're renting. Okay, and that's what you're doing. You're renting space from one of these offsite record storage providers to put your 1.2 cubic foot box there. And to stop the clock on that, you have to pay that perm out fee. Okay. Are there cases out there that is right now, the way the contract shapes up, is it too expensive to destroy? Yeah. And that's where you have to get into a competitive situation to drive those rates down. A lot of firms a lot of contracts we negotiate, and we've learned our lesson here. We get destruction allowances built in. If you don't have to flip the lid on these boxes, bring them back, it's a great cost-effective way to get records destroyed. The problem was we negotiated a ton of those, and firms were saying, yeah, we're ready to destroy 1/3 of our records. And this is going back a couple of years. And okay, and we get a nice destruction allowance in there. And the firm says, you know, I'm running into some roadblocks, I can't destroy them. Okay, well, I just wasted free destruction, you know, free, I'll put parentheses around that. That really, I could have lowered a price in another area, but firms weren't ready to destroy. They didn't get the buy off or whatever. So make sure they're evergreen. If you do get destruction allowances, okay, they carry forward. Make sure that everything is in place. If you do negotiate that, information governance policy, retention schedules, the buy-offs, and whatever you need. But allowances are one way to make it very, very cost effective. You know, obviously, you structure your contract so that if you can't, the perm out fees are decreasing over time. Again, a competitive situation is the only vehicle to allow you to do that. Okay, renegotiation of existing contracts, you know, and excuse the language here, you're only going to get screwed less. You're still going to get screwed. It'll be less. Try to negotiate that renewal. Okay, you got to create a competitive situation, and in that, you're going to have to handle those perm out fees. And a lot of times, or most of the time, the vendor that takes over your contracts will pay those for you. They're not going to go away, but that's going to be built into your pricing. But if you get a competitive enough pricing, you'll still be saving money, okay? Which is what we want. And then also too, look at a longer term contract. If I got an information governance policy in place, retention, I'm going to be in compliance. Don't go for these 3 or 5 year contracts. Go for 7 to 10. Because if you look at some of the price increases coming out when the firms aren't protected, it's not pretty. Okay, I like longer term contracts with a capped price or capped and or CPI, and sign a longer term deal. You'll get better terms, you'll get better pricing, you'll be protected, and really dovetail it to your destruction schedules with your retention schedule, so that at the end of the contract, you're done. Or you have the minimum amount that you have to carry, is documents that you have to retain. By negotiating now, also too, I got more volume in there, so I'll get a better price, and I'm working that down over time. Be careful of minimums. Some off service providers want to lock you into a minimum amount of storage. Be careful of those. But take a look at this. Like if your contract's up, and again, if you don't have the expertise, this is something we do. I'll put my sales hat on there for a second. But if you don't have the expertise in-house to create a competitive situation, talk to us. And but you just don't want to get a renewal and put it in place. You just don't want to keep on getting these Schedule A's, these extra charges that they're ramming down your throat. Okay. There's a way. I tell you, a lot of our contracts don't have the fuel surcharge, which is huge now. Okay, it is negotiable, but again, the only way you're going to get them to move if they fear the loss of that business, and that's a competitive situation. So, any questions on that part? Go ahead.
Yeah. So, question from Hutch: how many storage companies are there anymore? With mergers having eaten up the competition, is it harder to find competition between the vendors?
No. Obviously Iron Mountain's the 800-pound gorilla out there, but Access and VRC and GRM. GRM is specific, not a national solution, but they're strong in certain regions. But VRC and Access and Iron Mountain are national solutions. There's also the NRC, National Record Center, which is an umbrella organization for the smaller offsite record storage vendors. Sometimes they're competitive. Now you're dealing with umbrella organizations that have to get their their members and depending upon your firm's geography, organization's geography, get them in line to agree with the pricing. But it's definitely a viable solution. So no, there's still more than enough to create a competitive situation. You know, we get some firms that, oh, I open up my own offsite record storage facility. There's like 2 or 3 firms out there who have done that. Okay. Then Breezing up in Milwaukee did it. Firm in New York, Simpson Thatcher did it with their and they provide the people and they provide the software to keep track of where everything is and the retention. I'm not saying that's a viable solution, but it is a possibility. And it's, you know, it's a possible a competitive threat you could throw out there. But there's more than enough, to answer your question, more than enough vendors out there to create a competitive situation.
And then I'm not sure if you see it, but there's a question from Tom. Are there offsite storage vendors writing contracts without permanent removal fees enforceable at the end of the contract term?
If there are, let me know who they are, because I would love to talk to them. We'll get them greatly reduced. Okay, and in some cases, and we've negotiated contracts where they've been eliminated. Epstein Becker up in New York, it's the right time at the right moment, it was the right amount. But we do have contracts where they have been greatly reduced, and I'll say when greatly reduced, they went from like $6 down to like under $1. And it's feasible to happen. Just make sure, okay, make sure that they don't take that charge and put it somewhere else. Okay, you know, we go through a process and they'll say, okay, we'll reduce per mount fee down to, you know, 50 cents. And then they put a handling fee on there for, you know, 75 to make up for it. So make sure it's not going from one pocket to another. But to eliminate it, it depends upon a lot. It does happen once in a while. If that does happen, if you get a contract where you have 0 per mount fees and everything else is still in line, they should name a conference room at your firm for you. You know, they should throw a party for you. Not impossible, difficult. But if I get them down low enough, that's reasonable, fine. I get destruction allowances to take care of some of that stuff. And also too, the per mount, depending upon what your strategy is, if you could destroy at their facility, and I'm not paying you per mount. But again, I like to have a competitive per mount if I don't have a long enough contract and I have to go out to bid again, because it gives me the ability to make it competitive. So, other offsite record storage questions? No?
That's it for the moment.
Okay, we don't have the offsite record storage vendors on the call, do we? I should probably asked that about a half hour ago. I'll have my buddy, my consultant in here go out and start my car. No, it's a area. It's by far brings the most amount of angst to our clients. So it's a great thing to go after. Okay, point number 5. You need a digital pathway to stop producing paper. Paper from a storage viewpoint is problematic. Okay. Now, that being said, offsite record storage in a lot of situations, if my documents are not in digital format, is a cost-effective way to store paper if I have the right contract. Okay. If you look at scanning, and I add the price of scanning and then storing that for 10 years, offsite record storage still comes up being the least expensive form of storage. Okay. Problem is all the extra fees they throw on there. Okay, that are the killer. So, but regardless, I want to get some way that I can take any existing paper that I get within delivered to the firm, okay, and get it into a digital format and into my DMS system so I can manage it. Okay, it starts in the mailroom. Again, this is something 5 years ago. If I mentioned digital mail to a law firm, they looked at me like I had 2 heads. Why would we need that? Okay, well, the pandemic just showed it why you need it. Okay, it's also a great way to eliminate that paper, get into digital format, get it safely, okay, into my DMS, and still allow my users access regardless of where they're at, whether they're working down the beach or up in the mountains at their ski chalet or whatever. They still have access to the incoming mail. And when I say mail, I'm using a very, very broad term here. Overnight, anything that comes in by any carrier, outside post office or overnight carriers, I want to scan and get into my DMS. Okay. A couple questions there. One, why can't I just scan it, create a PDF, attach it to email, and send it? How many people have sent emails to the wrong people? Happens all the time. Okay. Not a very, very surefire way to get the document there 100% of the time correctly. If you haven't looked at any of the digital mail systems out there, and the two that we're very, very comfortable recommending, NQ ZebraWorks and DocSolid to Airmail 2, they get into your DMS and they create links and email out links. Very, very secure way to do it, okay? Access to the DMS system is, some firms get really crazy over that. You know, you gotta make sure IT is comfortable with that, and their concern is understandable. But anything that comes in from outside the firm, okay, I wanna get into digital format. We also often get asked, okay, what about all this paper here on site? Okay, what should I do with it? Well, if they're active working files and you have the capability and you have the manpower, scanning is not a bad idea. Yeah, 80 to 90% of those documents are in digital format. If they're already in there, and I just have working sets and so on like that, and there's ways to distinguish what's in my DMS system, then I don't need it, okay? But if they're not, then yeah, then it's fine to scan that, okay? We have some firms that we start working with, and they're bringing records from back off site, perming them out and scanning them. Okay, if you have a retention schedule, are you going to be able to destroy them in the next 7 to 10 years? Do the math. It doesn't make sense financially to bring them back and scan them. Leave them in offsite record storage, okay, until their retention period's up, and then destroy them. Now, that being said, are there exceptions to that? Yes. When I bring things back off-site, back from off-site into my in-house for, I need that one file. Okay, I'll scan that file. Okay, scan the rest of the contents of that box, or destroy it if it's past retention. But scan the rest of that box, put it in digital format, okay, and then either put other documents into the box and send it off-site, or permanently withdraw it. And that's one thing that came up on the last call. I believe the question came from this chapter. We've done a number of these ARMA discussions. Are you allowed to substitute the contents of a box that you brought back from offsite record storage and send it back? Absolutely you are. Okay, you got to update your systems to reflect what's in those boxes. But any of these offsite record storage vendors, you're paying rent on that 1.2 cubic foot space. Whether that box is sitting there or that box is at your location. You can put any contents you want in that box to send it back. Again, make sure you update your system and the offsite record storage systems. But yeah, you're allowed to change contents there. So that's another way around it. So generally, we're not in favor of bringing things back and scanning them. But there are exceptions. If you have to bring back the contents anyway, let's take advantage of it. I'm paying for it already. Let's take advantage of it. Any questions on that whole digital front end?
Nothing that I see, nothing yet.
Okay. But yeah, we need that digital highway to get paper into our system. Okay. I tell you, a question that came up, is it okay to use MDFs, copiers, for the scan and front end? It's not the best solution, but there are much better scanners out there, standalone scanners out there. It's workable, but we rather see a dedicated scanner. So if you are going to start doing this, you want to make sure you have the right equipment. And that, again, that's another whole conversation. I'm more than happy to have it with you and let you know what's good out there. Okay. Okay. To wrap up, one, take advantage of a crisis. Okay, and that's not to belittle the crisis that we just went through, but it has offered opportunities, but on the whole digital transformation, let's take advantage of it. You need upper management support, firm-wide initiative. You need a plan to get all these groups working together. You need the IG policy with retention. You got to get your offsite record storage contracts in shape if they're not. And if anyone has any questions about whether their offsite record storage contracts are in shape or not, we will benchmark them and tell you exactly where you stack up against the market, to let you know, and then you can go after the service provider or we can. And then the digital front end, key to having in place. Okay. Any other questions? How do we do time-wise? Okay.
Oh, we did, this is Hutch. We're kind of perfect time-wise. We're right at 11:29.
Fantastic. I didn't
So-
plan that exactly.
Oh, of course you did.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
take
should
credit.
take credit for that. Yeah.
Yeah,
it's
take
good.
credit for it. Exactly. It's beautiful. It's
Yeah.
perfect.
So, okay, Susan, any other comments flowing in?
No, I don't think so. I think you did a good job of catching things as you were going along.
Okay,
That was a
great.
really good idea. That was great.
Yeah, I like that. I like the interaction. So, okay, well, again, I appreciate the time and the opportunity to speak with your organization. Again, a lot of great questions out there. And any follow-up questions or issues or comments or whatever, please don't hesitate to reach out.
All righty. And you can, oh, there we are. Oh, we have a comment though from Ed Sturgeon, said, thanks you so much, and lots of good information. So
Great.
not
Glad
a
to hear it.
question, but a comment. That was fantastic.
You make my day. Okay,
Thanks, Rob.
All right. Thank you
take
very
care.
much.
Bye-bye.
All right, and it's Hutch Johnson again, and I'd like to thank everyone for attending. It was fantastic. It was a good season, I think, and we're going to have an even better one next year when we can all actually see each other again. So once again, yes, applause for that. All right, thank you very much, everybody, and we'll see you again next season. Thank you.
Thank you.